At 2:47 p.m. on September 14, 2024, I stood outside the Rosewood Country Club's bridal suite, listening to my daughter Sarah tell her bridesmaids that I was too old and embarrassing to walk her down the aisle. In exactly 53 minutes, I would destroy her $2.3 million wedding in front of 347 guests, including 3 federal judges, the state attorney general, and her new father-in-law who happened to be the CEO of a Fortune 500 company. My name is Harold Fitzgerald. I'm 72 years old, and this is the story of how I taught my ungrateful daughter the most expensive lesson of her life. The wedding coordinator knocked on my presidential suite door at 2:35 p.m. "Mr. Fitzgerald, we need you downstairs in 15 minutes for the processional lineup." I adjusted my $12,000 Brioni tuxedo and checked my Patek Philippe watch, a detail that would matter more than anyone realized. "I'll be right there, Michelle," I replied, my voice steady despite my blood pressure reading 186/108 on my medical monitor. What Michelle didn't know was that I had just received a text message that would change everything. The message was from James Richardson, my attorney in Boston. All documents confirmed. Trust modification recorded at 2:15 p.m. The nuclear option is armed. I deleted the message immediately, then crushed the burner phone under my heel, flushing the pieces down the toilet. Sarah had taught me to be paranoid about digital trails. How ironic that her lessons would be her undoing. "Dad's here somewhere, but honestly, I told Jennifer to keep him away from the main ceremony," I heard Sarah's voice clearly through the door. The bridesmaids tittered nervously. "He's 72, for God's sake. He can barely walk without that embarrassing cane, and his hands shake so badly he'd probably drop the rings. Plus, did you see him at the rehearsal dinner? He told the same story 3 times. I think the dementia is getting worse." "Oh my God, Sarah, that's so sad," one of them replied. I recognized the voice as Melissa Chun, her maid of honor, a pediatric surgeon at Mount Sinai. "Have you thought about, assisted living?" "Already handled," Sarah laughed. "Harrison and I put down a deposit at Sunset Manor. $50,000 non-refundable, but it'll be worth it. They specialize in difficult transitions, their words, not mine. They have experience with wealthy patients who don't want to go." "Isn't that kind of harsh?" another voice asked tentatively. "Harsh?" Sarah's voice turned cold. "Do you know what's harsh? Him hoarding nearly $2 billion while people suffer. He could solve homelessness in Connecticut and still have $1 billion left. Instead, he sits in that ridiculous mansion, counting his money like some Disney villain. Well, not for much longer. Harrison's family lawyers have everything ready. 6 months from today, every penny will be under conservatorship. Then we can actually do some good with it." "By good you mean that yacht you've been looking at?" Melissa laughed. "The celestial dream? That's only $47 million. Pocket change compared to what the old fool has hidden away. Did you know he has 17 offshore accounts? 17. Harrison found the records last month when Dad fell asleep at his desk. The man is literally too senile to protect his own assets. I'd built Morrison Fitzgerald Pharmaceuticals from nothing into a company worth $1.8 billion. I'd survived 3 heart attacks, beaten stage 3 colon cancer, and buried my wife Margaret 31 years ago next Tuesday. But nothing, absolutely nothing, had ever hurt as much as hearing those words from Sarah Elizabeth Fitzgerald, soon to be Sarah Pemberton, at 2:48 p.m. on what should have been the happiest day of her life. She had no idea that her demented old father had just liquidated $2.3 million in bonds that morning, the exact amount of her wedding gift, and that the check was sitting in my jacket pocket, waiting to be torn into exactly 347 pieces, one for each guest who would witness her humiliation. My phone vibrated again. Another message from Benjamin Crawford, my personal attorney, recording devices all functional. Every word crystal clear. I smiled for the first time that day. Sarah thought I was too old and embarrassing to walk her down the aisle. She was about to learn that Harold James Fitzgerald might be old, but he was far from finished. And in exactly 49 minutes, at 3:37 p.m., during the father-daughter dance she'd reluctantly agreed to for appearances, I would stand up, take the microphone, and deliver the wedding speech that would become legendary in Connecticut society circles for decades to come. Let me take you back to where this all really began, June 3, 2023, at 4:23 p.m., when I first noticed the changes in my daughter. I was sitting in my study at our Greenwich estate, reviewing the quarterly reports for Morrison Fitzgerald Pharmaceuticals, when Sarah walked in without knocking. This itself was unusual. She'd always been respectful of my workspace. The study hadn't changed since Margaret's death. The same leather-bound books, the same mahogany desk her father had given us as a wedding gift, the same portrait of Margaret above the fireplace, painted when she was 32 and radiant with life. "Dad, we need to talk about your future," she said, placing a glossy brochure on my mahogany desk. The cover read Sunset Manor, Premium Assisted Living for Distinguished Seniors. My reading glasses, prescription strength 2.75, were working perfectly fine as I saw the pre-filled application form with my name already typed in. Harold James Fitzgerald, age 71, diagnosed with moderate cognitive decline. "What the hell is this, Sarah?" I asked, my voice controlled but firm. She sat down in the leather chair across from me, the same chair where she used to sit as a little girl, begging me to read her just one more story before bed. I remembered her at age 6, missing her 2 front teeth, clutching her teddy bear Mr. Buttons, now stored in the attic, asking me to read The Velveteen Rabbit for the 100th time. That little girl was gone, replaced by this stranger in a $3,000 Armani suit. "Dad, you're forgetting things. Last week, you called me Margaret twice." Margaret was her mother, my late wife. "You left the stove on overnight. You missed your cardiology appointment. Dr. Richards thinks dash. You spoke to my cardiologist without my permission?" I interrupted, feeling my pulse quicken. My Fitbit later showed it hit 134 beats per minute at that exact moment. "I'm worried about you, Dad. You're 71 years old. You shouldn't be living alone in this huge house. You shouldn't be driving. And honestly," she paused, glancing at the financial statements on my desk, "you shouldn't be managing this much money by yourself anymore." That was the first red flag, but I dismissed it. She was getting married, planning a future with Harrison Pemberton III, heir to the Pemberton Hotel empire. I thought she was just concerned about her old man. I didn't realize she was already executing a carefully orchestrated plan that had been 18 months in the making. "Sarah," I said carefully, "I appreciate your concern, but I had my annual cognitive assessment 2 weeks ago. Dr. Yamamoto at Yale gave me a perfect score. Would you like to see the results?" "Those tests can be manipulated, Dad. You know that. You probably paid him off." I paid him his standard fee of $1,500 for a comprehensive evaluation, if that's what you mean. She stood up abruptly. "This is exactly what I'm talking about. You're paranoid, accusatory. Mom would be horrified to see you like this." The invocation of Margaret's name as a weapon made my jaw clench. "Your mother," I said slowly, "would be horrified to see you trying to put me in a home when I'm perfectly healthy." "Perfectly healthy? Dad, you're on 14 different medications." 13, I corrected. "I stopped the lisinopril last month. Blood pressure's been stable at 130/85 without it." She rolled her eyes, a gesture I hadn't seen since she was 16 and I'd refused to let her go to Cancun for spring break. "Whatever. The point is, you need help. Harrison agrees." "Oh, Harrison agrees? The boy who's marrying you for your inheritance agrees I should be in a home? How remarkably convenient. Harrison loves me. Harrison loves your last name and your trust fund. In that order." She grabbed the brochure off my desk. "Fine. Be stubborn. But when you fall down those stairs or forget to take your heart medication, don't say I didn't try to help." As she stormed out, she slammed the door hard enough to rattle the Waterford crystal decanters on the bar. I sat there for a long moment, staring at Margaret's portrait. What happened to our little girl? I asked the painting. Margaret's painted eyes offered no answers. The second sign came on August 17, 2023, at 11:43 a.m. I was at my office in Stamford Corner Suite, 42nd floor, overlooking the Long Island Sound. My assistant, Jennifer Chun, knocked on my door. Jennifer had been with me for 12 years, ever since she graduated from Wharton. She was one of the few people I trusted completely. "Mr. Fitzgerald, there's been some unusual activity on your accounts. 3 large withdrawals were attempted this morning, but they were flagged by our security protocols. Each withdrawal was for exactly $99,999.99, just under the $100,000 threshold that would trigger federal reporting requirements. The attempts came from a computer with an IP address registered to Sarah's apartment in Manhattan, specifically her building at 432 Park Avenue, Unit 78B. Pull up the security footage from the building's cameras," I told Jennifer. We had access through our security company, completely legal, as I owned the building through a shell corporation Sarah didn't know about. The footage showed Sarah entering her apartment at 11:15 a.m. with Harrison and another man, tall, thin, wearing an expensive suit that screamed lawyer. They went straight to her home office. The withdrawal attempt started at 11:31 a.m. When I confronted her that evening at dinner, we were at Lou Bernardine, her favorite restaurant. Bill total $1,847.33, including the 30% tip I always leave. She laughed it off. "Dad, I was just testing the new financial management software Harrison's company developed. I wanted to see if it could integrate with your accounts for when you need help managing things. I wasn't actually going to take any money. You tried to withdraw $300,000. I tried to test the system's limits. There's a difference." "Is there?" "Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like attempted theft." She set down her fork. The 19th century silver we were eating with probably cost more than most people's cars. "Theft? From my own father? The money's going to be mine eventually anyway." "Eventually is not today." "No," she said quietly, "but it might be sooner than you think." I believed her explanation at the time. God help me, I believed my own daughter. But I also called my bank that night and had them add 3 more layers of security to all my accounts. Paranoid? Perhaps. But as they say, even paranoid people have enemies. The third warning came on October 22, 2023, my 72nd birthday. Sarah organized a surprise party at the Yale Club. 43 guests, all carefully chosen. What I didn't realize until later was that 31 of them were either lawyers, doctors, or financial advisors, all potential witnesses to my supposed cognitive decline. The Yale Club's main dining room had been transformed. Crystal chandeliers cast soft light over tables dressed in ivory linens. The centerpieces, white orchids and roses, must have cost a fortune. Sarah had even hired a string quartet, though she knew I preferred jazz. Throughout the evening, Sarah kept prompting me to tell stories, then would gently correct me in front of everyone. "No, Dad, that happened in 1987, not 1997. Actually, Dad, it was $50 million, not $15 million. Oh, Dad's confused again. That was Uncle Robert, not Uncle Richard. Dr. Marcus Hoffman, a neurologist I'd never met before, just happened to be seated next to me. Sarah introduced him as Harrison's golf buddy, but I did my research later. He was the head of geriatric psychiatry at Presbyterian. He spent the entire dinner performing subtle cognitive tests disguised as casual conversation. Mr. Fitzgerald, what a fascinating career you've had. Can you tell me the sequence of companies you acquired between 1995 and 2000? When I listed all 17 acquisitions in perfect chronological order, including the exact purchase prices down to the cent, he looked disappointed. "That's very impressive," he said, making a note in his phone. "Are you evaluating me, doctor?" I asked directly. I'm sorry. The orientation questions, the memory tests, the way you're watching my hands for tremors. Either you're evaluating me or you have the world's most boring party conversation style. He had the grace to look embarrassed. Sarah mentioned you've been having some difficulties. The only difficulty I'm having is with my daughter's sudden interest in my mental capacity. But the real revelation came on December 15, 2023, at 3:33 p.m. I had gone to Sarah's apartment to drop off an early Christmas gift, a pair of diamond earrings that had belonged to her mother, recently reset in platinum at a cost of $47,650. The doorman, Carlos, whom I'd known for 5 years and always tipped generously at Christmas $1,000 in cash, let me up without calling ahead. "Miss Sarah left about an hour ago, Mr. Fitzgerald," he said. "But you know you're always welcome." I used my key to enter. The apartment was modern, cold, all glass and steel and sharp edges. Nothing like the warm, book-filled home where she'd grown up. Harrison's influence, no doubt. On her dining room table, spread out like a war room strategy map, were documents that made my blood run cold. Financial statements for all my accounts she shouldn't have even known existed. The Cayman Islands account with $47 million. The Swiss accounts totaling $180 million. The real estate holdings in 12 countries, worth approximately $320 million. How had she found them all? Medical records from doctors I'd never authorized to share information. Dr. Hoffman's evaluation for my birthday party, stating I showed signs of mild cognitive impairment and paranoid ideation. A report from Dr. Patricia Weinstein dated September 9, 2023, claiming she'd conducted a 2-hour evaluation that diagnosed me with moderate dementia with behavioral disturbances, on a day I was actually in Boston for a board meeting, with 14 witnesses and credit card records to prove it. A PowerPoint presentation titled Project Sunset, with my photo on the cover. The slides were devastating in their detail. Slide 1, Overview, Securing HF's Assets Before Complete Decline. Slide 2, Timeline, 6 months to complete control. Slide 3, Legal Strategy, Conservatorship versus Power of Attorney. Slide 4, Asset Distribution Post-Control. Slide 5, Managing Public Relations and Family Concerns. And most damning of all, a legal document dated November 3, 2023, attempting to establish a conservatorship over my assets, citing progressive cognitive decline and inability to manage financial affairs. The signature line for the petitioner was already signed, Sarah Elizabeth Fitzgerald. The second signature, Harrison Pemberton III, identified as concerned future son-in-law and financial advisor. I photographed everything with my iPhone 14 Pro Max, 487 photos in total, each one time-stamped and GPS tagged. I also found a small notebook in Sarah's handwriting, documenting my symptoms. June 1st, forgot Harrison's name at dinner, called him Herbert. June 15th, told story about mom's funeral twice in same conversation. July 3rd, couldn't find car in parking lot for 20 minutes. July 19th, wore same suit 3 days in a row. August 2nd, called me Margaret 5 times during lunch. Each entry was a lie. I checked my calendar, my credit card statements, my photos. On June 1st, I was in London. On July 3rd, I didn't even drive. I had my driver take me everywhere that day. The suit allegation was particularly amusing, as I have 47 suits and my housekeeper Maria logs everything I wear to ensure proper rotation for cleaning. Then I sat down in Sarah's apartment and read through every single document. The plan was brilliant in its cruelty. They would wait until after the wedding, after I'd paid for everything, after I'd given them the $2.3 million wedding gift I'd promised. Then, within 6 months, they would file for conservatorship, claiming I was no longer competent to manage my affairs. The evidence they'd manufactured was impressive. Forged medical records showing cognitive test scores I'd never taken. Bank statements with transactions circled in red, labeled as erratic spending patterns consistent with dementia. They'd even created a video compilation of me at various family events, edited to show only moments where I looked confused or tired, with ominous music added for effect. But the most nauseating discovery was a text message thread between Sarah and Harrison, which she'd carelessly left open on her iPad. I scrolled through 3 months of messages, each one more damaging than the last. Harrison, July 18th, 10:47 p.m. How much is the old man worth exactly? Sarah, last count? About $1.8 billion, but most of it's tied up in the company. Harrison, and the liquid assets? Sarah, $340 million, give or take. Plus the real estate. Harrison, perfect. My dad's lawyers say 6 months after the wedding is ideal. Less suspicious. Sarah, sometimes I wonder if we should wait. Let nature take its course. Harrison, he's 72 with a heart condition. How much time does he really have? But we can't risk him changing the will or giving it all to charity. Sarah, he mentioned something about a pediatric cancer foundation last week. In Mom's name. Harrison, see? We need to act. This is about protecting your inheritance. Sarah, our inheritance. Harrison, right? Our inheritance. Face blowing a kiss. Sarah, August 2nd, 2:15 a.m. Sometimes I feel guilty. He's not a bad father. Harrison, he's had his life, babe. Built his empire, had his fun. This is about our future, our kids' future. Sarah, you're right. He'd probably want us to have it anyway. Harrison, exactly. We're just helping him make the right decision while he still has some capacity left. Sarah, when you put it that way, it sounds almost noble. Harrison, it is noble. We're protecting him from himself. Sarah, September 30th, 6:22 p.m. He almost caught on today. Found me looking through his desk. Harrison, what did you tell him? Sarah, that I was looking for Mom's old photo albums for the wedding. Harrison, did he buy it? Sarah, of course. He gets so sentimental about Mom. It's actually pathetic. Harrison, use that. The more emotional he is, the less logical. Classic dementia symptom. Sarah, you're brilliant. Harrison, that's why you're marrying me. Well, that and my family's connections. Sarah, and your abs. Harrison, those two. Flexed biceps. Sarah, October 10th, 11:30 p.m. Dr. Hoffman says Dad passed all his tests at the party. Harrison, doesn't matter. Weinstein will say whatever we need. Sarah, is she reliable? Harrison, for $50,000 she'll diagnose him with anything. She's done this before. Sarah, how many times? Harrison, 17. Never been caught. Sarah, Jesus. Harrison, welcome to the real world, babe. This is how fortunes are transferred. I sat in that apartment for 3 hours and 17 minutes, reading every document, every text, every email. My Apple Watch showed my heart rate never dropped below 95 beats per minute the entire time. By the time I left at 6:50 p.m., I had formulated the beginning of a plan. Sarah wanted to destroy me after the wedding? Fine. I would destroy her during it. But first, I needed to ensure everything was legal and unassailable. The next morning, December 16th, I drove to Boston. Not my usual driver. I drove myself in my 1967 Mustang that Sarah didn't even know I still owned. I met with James Richardson at his Beacon Hill townhouse, not his office. Too many eyes at the office. Harold, he said, pouring me a Scotch Macallan 1946, $75,000 a bottle, but James only brought it out for special occasions. You look like you've seen a ghost. I showed him everything. Every photo, every document, every text. He reviewed it all in silence for 2 hours, occasionally making notes in his leather-bound journal. Finally, he looked up. "This is attempted elder abuse, fraud, conspiracy, and about 12 other crimes," he said. "We could have them arrested tomorrow." "No," I said. "I want to do this my way." "Which is?" "Complete and total destruction, but legally. Publicly. I want everyone to know what kind of person my daughter has become." James leaned back in his chair. "That's cruel, Harold." "Is it crueler than what she's planning for me?" He considered this. "No, I suppose not. What do you need?" "First, I need to restructure everything. Make it impossible for any conservatorship to touch my assets. Second, I need surveillance. Legal surveillance. I want every conversation recorded, every meeting documented. Third, I need you to prepare the nuclear option." "Which is?" "A complete disinheritance, effective immediately upon any attempt to have me declared incompetent or upon evidence of conspiracy to defraud. But here's the twist. I want the disinheritance to be retroactive. Any gifts, any money, any assets she's received from me become loans, due immediately with interest." James whistled low. "That's vindictive. That's justice." Over the next 6 months, I played the greatest role of my life. I became the declining father Sarah expected to see. I forgot a few appointments, carefully chosen ones that Sarah would hear about. I occasionally called Harrison by the wrong name, usually Herbert or Harold, just to see the irritation flash across his face. I even staged a minor fender bender in the country club parking lot, making sure several of Sarah's friends witnessed it. The other car was driven by a stunt driver I'd hired for $10,000 cash. The damage was pre-existing, covered by makeup that washed off in the rain. All the while, I was working with my real legal team, not the estate lawyers Sarah knew about, but a firm in Boston that handled only my most sensitive matters. We moved assets through 17 different offshore accounts, each transfer documented and legal but completely opaque to outside scrutiny. We created trusts within trusts, corporations owning corporations, a maze of legal entities that would take years to unravel even if someone knew where to start looking. On February 8, 2024, at 9 a.m. sharp, I met with the full team. 12 lawyers, 3 accountants, 2 private investigators, and a former FBI agent who specialized in financial crimes. The war room was impressive. Charts, graphs, timelines, all focused on one goal: protecting my assets while destroying those who would steal them. "Gentlemen, ladies," I said, standing at the head of the conference table. "In 6 months, my daughter will attempt to have me declared incompetent. We're going to let her try. In fact, we're going to help her think she's succeeding. But at the crucial moment, we're going to reveal everything. Every lie, every forged document, every conspiracy. And we're going to do it in the most public way possible." "The wedding," James said, understanding immediately. "The wedding," I confirmed. "In front of everyone who matters in her world." The lead investigator, a former Secret Service agent named Michael Torres, raised his hand. "Mr. Fitzgerald, we found something else you should know about." He pulled up a photo on the screen. It showed Harrison leaving a townhouse in Brooklyn at 2 a.m., adjusting his tie. "This is from last Tuesday. The townhouse belongs to a woman named Crystal Martinez. She's a professional companion." "Harrison's cheating?" "Regularly. Twice a week, sometimes more. Always pays cash, always the same woman. She's actually quite fond of him, says he tips well and talks about his plans for after the wedding." "What kind of plans?" "Apparently, he's planning to divorce Sarah within 2 years. Once he has access to your money, he'll claim irreconcilable differences, take half of whatever Sarah has, and disappear. He's already got a house picked out in the Bahamas." I laughed. Actually laughed. "So my daughter is planning to betray me, and her fiancé is planning to betray her. It's almost Shakespearean. Do you want us to tell Sarah? James asked. God, no. Let her find out on her own. After the wedding. March through August 2024 passed in a blur of wedding preparations. Sarah threw herself into planning with an obsession that would have been touching if I hadn't known her true motivations. Every detail had to be perfect. The flowers alone, white orchids flown in from Thailand, cost $73,000. The band, some group that had played at 3 celebrity weddings, commanded a $45,000 fee. The photographer, the only one who understands light, according to Sarah, charged $25,000 for 8 hours of work. I paid for everything. Every single thing. And I kept meticulous records. Not just receipts, but recordings of every conversation where Sarah demanded more money. Daddy, the caterer, says the Wagyu beef will be an extra $50,000. Is that okay? Of course, sweetheart. Whatever makes you happy. The dress alterations are $15,000. I know it seems like a lot, but don't worry about it. You only get married once. That last comment made her flinch slightly. Did she feel guilty? For exactly 1.3 seconds, according to the micro-expression analysis my investigator did later on the video footage. On September 7th, 1 week before the wedding, Sarah made her final mistake. She called Dr. Patricia Weinstein, the psychiatrist who had supposedly evaluated me, and put her on speaker while Harrison was in the room. What Sarah didn't know was that I had hired a private investigator who had placed a perfectly legal recording device in the public hallway outside her apartment, capturing every word that could be heard through her paper-thin walls. Dr. Weinstein, we need you to update the evaluation. Make it more recent, maybe dated this week. Ms. Fitzgerald, I've already told you, I'm not comfortable with this. I've never actually met your father. The $50,000 we paid you says you have. That was supposed to be for a real evaluation after you got conservatorship. Plans change. We need it now. The wedding's in a week, and we're filing the papers the Monday after. This is fraud. I could lose my license. You could lose a lot more than that if you don't cooperate. My fiancé's family has connections you don't want to test. There was a pause. Then Weinstein's voice, smaller now, what do you need me to say? Severe cognitive decline. Inability to manage affairs. Immediate intervention recommended. Use lots of medical terms. Make it sound urgent, but not so urgent that anyone would question why we're waiting until after the wedding. This is wrong. So is you taking money from those other 17 families? Yeah, we know about them. Harrison's father had you investigated. So you can either help us and keep making your house payments, or we can make some phone calls. Your choice. Fine. I'll have it ready by tomorrow. Good. And doctor? Make it convincing. We're paying you enough. The recording was crystal clear. Every word admissible in court. September 13th, the day before the wedding, was the rehearsal dinner at the Harvard Club. 73 guests, $42,000 for food and drinks. I gave a toast that brought tears to Sarah's eyes. My daughter has always been the light of my life, I said, raising my glass of 1947 Chateau d'Yquem. Tomorrow, as I walk her down the aisle, I'll be thinking of her mother, Margaret, and how proud she would be of the woman Sarah has become. Margaret always said that Sarah would grow up to change the world. She just never specified whether it would be for better or worse. That last line got a laugh. Sarah didn't catch the double meaning. I remember when Sarah was 7, I continued. She came to me crying because someone at school said she was adopted. I showed her pictures of her mother pregnant, of the day she was born, of her first steps. And she said, "Daddy, why would anyone lie about something so important?" I told her then what I'll tell you all now. Sometimes people lie because the truth is too painful to admit. Sometimes they lie because they want something that isn't theirs. And sometimes, they lie because they've forgotten the difference between truth and fiction. Sarah was dabbing at her eyes with her napkin. The other guests were smiling, thinking it was a sweet story about childhood innocence. They had no idea I was describing their hostess. But tonight isn't about lies or truth, I said, my voice carrying across the room. It's about family. About the bonds that should be unbreakable. About the trust between a father and daughter that should be sacred. Tomorrow, Sarah begins a new chapter with Harrison. I hope they build their marriage on a foundation of honesty, respect, and genuine love. Because without those things, even the most beautiful wedding is just an elaborate performance. I raised my glass higher. To Sarah and Harrison. May you get exactly what you deserve. Everyone drank. Sarah actually hugged me afterward, whispering, "I love you, Daddy," in my ear. The performance was so convincing I almost believed it myself. Almost. That night, I made my final preparations. I reviewed my speech one last time, ensuring every word was perfect. I confirmed with my lawyer that all documents were ready. I checked with my private investigator that the audio equipment was in place, hidden microphones in the bridal suite, the groom's room, and the reception hall, all completely legal as I was the one who had paid for the venues and technically owned them for the day. I took my blood pressure medication, doubling the dose. I would need steady hands for what was coming. Then I did something I hadn't done in 31 years. I went to Margaret's grave. The cemetery was quiet at midnight. I sat on the cold ground next to her headstone, not caring about my $5,000 suit. "I'm sorry, Margaret," I said to the stone. "I'm sorry I couldn't save her. I tried to raise her right, to teach her about love and loyalty and honor. But somewhere along the way, I lost her. Maybe when you died. Maybe later. Maybe she was always this way and I just couldn't see it." A light rain started to fall. I didn't move. "Tomorrow, I'm going to destroy our daughter," I continued. "Publicly. Completely. I'm going to take away everything, her money, her reputation, her future. Part of me wonders if you'd hate me for it. But I think you'd understand. She's not our little girl anymore, Margaret. She's become something else. Something cruel and greedy and heartless. And I can't let her win." I stood up, my knees protesting. "I love you, Margaret. I've loved you every day for 38 years. And after tomorrow, I'll have avenged you. Our daughter used your memory as a weapon against me. She mocked my grief, called it pathetic. For that alone, she deserves what's coming." I walked back to my car, a 2024 Bentley Continental GT that Sarah had called ostentatious. As I drove home, I thought about the morning, about what was about to happen. And I felt nothing. No sadness, no anger, just a cold determination to see justice done. Which brings us back to September 14, 2024, 2:47 p.m., standing outside that bridal suite, listening to my daughter plan my destruction while wearing the dress I'd bought her. "And after we get control," Sarah was saying, "the first thing we do is sell that mausoleum of a house. Can you imagine? 47 rooms for one old man. It's obscene." "What about all his wife's things?" Melissa asked. "Isn't the house like a shrine to her? We'll have an estate sale. Some collector will pay a fortune for her jewelry. And those paintings? The Monet alone is worth $30 million. "Sarah," one of the bridesmaids gasped. "That's so cold." "It's practical. He's going to die soon anyway. His heart is basically held together with medication and stubbornness. Why should all that wealth sit there gathering dust when Harrison and I could use it to actually live?" That was enough. I knocked on the door. "Sarah, sweetheart, it's time." She opened it, and for a moment, she looked exactly like her mother had on our wedding day 38 years ago. The same eyes, the same smile, the same graceful way of moving in a wedding dress. The $47,000 Vera Wang creation was perfection itself. Ivory silk with hand-sewn pearls, a cathedral-length train, and a veil that had belonged to Margaret's grandmother. If I hadn't heard what I'd heard, if I didn't know what I knew, I might have forgiven everything in that moment. "Daddy!" she exclaimed, loud enough for everyone to hear. "You look so handsome. Are you ready to walk me down the aisle?" "Actually, Sarah, about that," I said, my voice carrying into the room where her bridesmaids were gathered. "I heard what you said about me being too old and embarrassing. So I've made other arrangements." The color drained from her face. "Daddy, I don't know what you dash. Your Uncle Robert will walk you down the aisle. He's younger, steadier on his feet, and apparently less embarrassing." I turned to the bridesmaids, who were staring in shock. "Ladies, you might want to touch up your makeup. The ceremony starts in exactly 12 minutes. Daddy, wait." Sarah grabbed my arm. "You don't understand. I didn't mean dash." "Oh, I understand perfectly." I removed her hand from my arm, gently but firmly. "I understand that you think I'm too old, too embarrassing, and too demented to participate in your wedding. So I'm respecting your wishes. Robert is waiting in the hallway." "Please," she whispered, tears starting to form. "Please don't do this." "Don't do what? Honor your clearly stated preferences? I thought you wanted me out of the way. I'm simply obliging." I walked away, hearing Sarah's panicked voice behind me. "Daddy, come back. I'm sorry. I didn't mean it." But I was already gone, heading to the ceremony space where 347 guests were waiting. I took my seat in the front row, in the spot reserved for the father of the bride. The whispers started immediately. Where was I during the processional? Why was Robert walking Sarah down the aisle? Had something happened? Harrison's parents, seated across the aisle, kept shooting me concerned glances. Harrison Pemberton Jr. was a shrewd man. He built his hotel empire from nothing, just like I'd built mine. He knew something was wrong. The music started, Pachelbel's Canon in D, Margaret's favorite. The bridesmaids walked in, their faces carefully neutral, but their eyes darting toward me. Then came Sarah on Robert's arm. She looked beautiful but shaken, her smile forced, her steps unsteady. As she passed my row, she looked at me with pleading eyes. I stared straight ahead. The ceremony itself was mercifully short, 22 minutes. The officiant, Reverend Thomas Morrison, had known our family for 30 years. He'd performed Margaret's funeral service. He kept glancing at me, clearly confused about why I wasn't standing with Sarah. When he asked if anyone had any objections, I remained silent. That wasn't the moment. The moment would come later, during the reception, during the father-daughter dance that was scheduled for exactly 8:15 p.m. As Sarah and Harrison were pronounced husband and wife, I felt my phone vibrate. A text from James, "All systems go. Recording devices capturing everything. Financial traps armed. Ready when you are." The cocktail hour was at 5:30 p.m. I mingled with guests, my manner perfectly normal, even cheerful. Judge Patricia Henley, who had been Margaret's roommate at Yale, cornered me by the bar. "Harold, what happened with the processional? Why didn't you walk Sarah down the aisle?" "Sarah felt Robert would be a better choice," I said, sipping my martini, Hendrick's gin, very dry, 3 olives. "Something about me being too old." "Too old? You're 72, not 92. And you look fantastic. Tell that to my daughter." The pity in her eyes was almost amusing. Word spread quickly through the cocktail hour. By the time we moved to the reception hall, everyone was whispering about the father of the bride who'd been rejected by his own daughter. Dinner service began at 6:45 p.m. 14 courses, each one more elaborate than the last. The Wagyu beef alone cost $300 per plate. The wine pairings for each course added another $200 per person. I sat at the parents' table, making polite conversation with Harrison's family. Harrison Pemberton Jr. leaned over during the third course. "Harold, is everything all right? This business with the processional." "Everything is perfect," I replied. "Couldn't be better." "You're sure?" "Because Harrison seems nervous. He keeps checking his phone. Wedding day jitters, I'm sure." But I knew exactly why Harrison was nervous. My investigator had sent him a single text from an anonymous number. "We know about Crystal." Just enough to make him sweat, not enough for him to do anything about it. At 7:48 p.m., the best man gave his toast. Standard stuff: how Harrison and Sarah met, how perfect they were together, how bright their future looked. Then the maid of honor, Melissa, who couldn't quite meet my eyes as she talked about Sarah's generous spirit and family values. Then Harrison's father stood up. His speech was interesting. Lots of talk about the importance of honesty in marriage, of building something together rather than taking what others had built. Was he suspicious? Or just naturally cautious? Finally, it was my turn. I stood up slowly, making sure to lean heavily on my cane, the same cane Sarah had called embarrassing. The room fell silent. 347 pairs of eyes focused on me. "Good evening, everyone. I'm Harold Fitzgerald, Sarah's father. I know tradition dictates I should have walked my daughter down the aisle today, but Sarah felt, and these are her exact words, that I was too old and embarrassing for that honor." Gasps rippled through the room. Sarah's face turned crimson. Harrison grabbed her hand under the table. "But that's all right," I continued, my voice steady and clear, carrying to every corner of the ballroom. At 72 years old, after building a pharmaceutical empire worth $1.8 billion, after raising Sarah alone when her mother died, after paying $487,293 for her medical degree, $230,000 for her undergraduate education, $1.2 million for her Manhattan apartment, and now $2,347,892.44 for this wedding, I've learned to accept my limitations. I reached into my jacket pocket and pulled out the check. $2.3 million, I announced, holding it up so everyone could see. This was supposed to be my wedding gift to Sarah and Harrison. A little something to start their new life together. The room was so quiet you could hear the air conditioning humming. But I've realized that Sarah is right. I am too old. Too old to be taken for a fool. Too old to pretend I don't know what's really happening. And definitely too old to stand by while my own daughter plots to destroy me. I began tearing the check into pieces. The sound echoed through the silent ballroom. Each rip was deliberate, theatrical. Someone gasped. Someone else whispered, "Oh my God." "You see," I continued, letting the pieces of the check fall like snow onto the table, 3 months ago, I discovered something interesting in Sarah's apartment. Documents. Plans. A whole strategy laid out in detail. She and Harrison have been planning to have me declared incompetent. They forged medical documents, paid off a psychiatrist, and created an elaborate scheme to steal my fortune. That's a lie. Sarah stood up, her voice shrill. "Daddy's confused. He's been showing signs of dementia for months." "Have I?" I pulled out my phone. "Let's see what you really think, shall we?" I played the recording from earlier that day, my phone connected to the venue's sound system. Sarah's voice filled the room. "He's 72, for God's sake. He can barely walk without that embarrassing cane, and his hands shake so badly he'd probably drop the rings. I think the dementia is getting worse." Then, Harrison and I put down a deposit at Sunset Manor. $50,000 non-refundable. They have experience with wealthy patients who don't want to go. The room erupted. Harrison's father shot to his feet. "What the hell is this?" "There's more," I said calmly. I played the conversation with Dr. Weinstein, every damning word echoing off the walls. "Dr. Weinstein, we need you to update the evaluation." The $50,000 we paid you says you have. My fiancé's family has connections you don't want to test. Judge Henley stood up. This is criminal conspiracy. Fraud. Elder abuse. Indeed it is, I agreed. But wait, there's more. I turned to the wedding coordinator and nodded. She handed me a folder. We'd practiced this moment. Here are the documents Sarah and Harrison prepared. Conservatorship papers already filled out, just waiting for a judge's signature. Bank account transfers ready to execute. Power of attorney forms with forged signatures. And my personal favorite, a commitment order for Sunset Manor, dated for October 1st, just 2 weeks from now. Harrison's father walked over and took the documents, his hands shaking as he read them. You were going to rob him, he said to his son, his voice deadly quiet. You were going to destroy this man who paid for your entire wedding? It's not like that, Dad Harrison started. Shut up. Harrison Jr. turned to me. Mr. Fitzgerald, I am deeply, deeply sorry. This is not how the Pemberton family does business. Oh, but it gets better, I said. Sarah, would you like to tell everyone about the text messages? The ones where you and Harrison discussed my net worth like you were planning a shopping trip. I pulled up the messages on my phone, reading them aloud. How much is the old man worth exactly? That's Harrison. Sarah replies, about $1.8 billion, but most of it's tied up in the company. Harrison, and the liquid assets? Sarah, $340 million, give or take. Plus the real estate. Sarah had collapsed back into her chair, sobbing. Her mascara was running, creating black streams down her cheeks. The $3,000 makeup job was ruined. Or this charming exchange, I continued. Sometimes I feel guilty. He's not a bad father. That's Sarah. Harrison replies, he's had his life, babe. This is about our future, our kids' future. Sarah, you're right. He'd probably want us to have it anyway. Harrison, exactly. We're just helping him make the right decision. Someone in the back shouted, call the police. Already done, I said. They're waiting outside. But I wanted to finish my toast first. I raised my glass of champagne, Dom Perignon 1996, $2,000 a bottle. To Sarah and Harrison, I said, may you have a long and happy marriage. Though statistically speaking, marriages that begin with fraud and end with arrest don't tend to last very long. Harrison tried to stand up, probably to run, but his father grabbed his shoulder and forced him back down. You're not going anywhere, son. Now, I said, I have a few more announcements. Effective immediately, Sarah Elizabeth Fitzgerald, or should I say Pemberton, is no longer in my will. She is also no longer welcome in any property I own, which includes the house she grew up in, the apartment she lives in, and the building we're currently standing in. Yes, I own this country club through a holding company. The wedding coordinator looked shocked. I'd kept that detail from her. Furthermore, I continued, any gifts I've given Sarah in the past 5 years are now considered loans, due immediately with interest. That includes the apartment, the car, the medical school tuition, and various cash gifts totaling approximately $3.7 million. My lawyers will be in touch. You can't do that. Sarah screamed. Actually, I can. You see, every gift came with a contract, which you signed without reading. There's a clause, subsection 47, paragraph 3, that states any attempt to defraud, defame, or harm the gifter results in the immediate conversion of the gift to a loan with 18% annual interest, compounded daily. I turned to address the room at large. Ladies and gentlemen, please, enjoy the reception. The food is paid for, the band is excellent, and the bar is open until midnight. Think of it as a celebration of truth revealed rather than a marriage built on deception and greed. 2 police officers entered the ballroom. Detective James Murphy, whom I'd known for 20 years, He'd handled the investigation when Margaret's jewelry was stolen by a housekeeper in 1995. "Mr. Fitzgerald," he said formally, "we're here about the fraud complaint." "Thank you for waiting, Detective. The perpetrators are at the head table." As the police approached Sarah and Harrison, Harrison's father stepped aside. "Officers, you'll have my full cooperation. This is disgraceful." Sarah looked at me one last time as the handcuffs clicked around her wrists. "Daddy, please. Don't do this. I'm your daughter." "No," I said quietly. "My daughter died the day she decided I was too old and embarrassing to love. You're just someone who looks like her." As they led Sarah and Harrison out, the room exploded into chaos. Guests were pulling out phones, calling lawyers, calling newspapers. Sarah's childhood room is part of the tour, a cautionary tale about greed destroying family bonds. Last week, my accountant confirmed that Sarah now owes me $4.7 million with accumulated interest. She'll be paying it back at $500 per month from her prison job making license plates at 23 cents per hour. At that rate, she'll be debt-free in approximately 783 years. Harrison? His marriage to Sarah was annulled on grounds of fraud. Turns out he'd been married before and never divorced his first wife. He's serving his sentence in a different facility, 3 states away from Sarah. They haven't spoken since the arrest. I still visit Margaret's grave every Sunday at 3 p.m. sharp. Last week, I told her the whole story, start to finish. I like to think she would have been proud of how I handled it. Not happy. She never liked conflict, but proud that I stood up for myself, that I refused to be a victim. The wedding photographer, despite everything, created a beautiful album. I keep it in my study, right next to Margaret's portrait. Sometimes I flip through it and remember the exact moment I exposed the truth. The look on everyone's faces. The sound of champagne glasses dropping. The perfect destruction of a perfectly planned crime. Justice, served ice cold with a side of wedding cake. Thank you for listening to today's story of Justice Served Cold. If it resonated with you, share your thoughts below. Look at your screen right now. 2 more stories are waiting for you, each one proving that karma always keeps the receipts. Hit the notification bell. Tomorrow's revelation will leave you speechless. Remember, respect your elders, or become the next cautionary tale.